Let's bring in Mike Huckabee now, Fox News contributor, author of a brand new book. It's excellent. It's called Rare, Medium, or Done Well. Governor, there's a lot going on today. The president's under pressure to not sign this bill from the Freedom Caucus that would extend spending, avoid a government shutdown until February. Where do you stand?
Well, first of all, I just want to say if Ducey shows up at my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, he better bring some groceries and a gift. I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah. Might get a Cuisinart.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm troubled by what's going on. I feel like the Republicans have caved in again, and I'm so grateful that you've got the Freedom Caucus members who are reminding the president, their fellow Republicans, and America that they won because of the border wall, and they lost because it didn't get done. Now, they need to be looking ahead and realize that if you capitulate on this, because Americans, not just Republicans, but Americans overall, except the most liberal Democrats, believe we ought to secure the border. And they believe that we ought to fund the wall. I mean, we just sent $2.8 billion down to Mexico and Central America to help them in development. Now, I'm not against that, but I'm against doing that and saying we don't have enough money for the $5 billion that the president has asked for. I think the president should dig in his heels. I'm a little disappointed that there's been sort of a mixed message going on. And I think it's time to tell Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, look, here's the deal. We'll give you DACA, but you're going to give us the wall. And if you don't, the government shuts down. Well, and it's just going to be, tough rocks for everybody.
Sure. And, Governor, as you know, it's not the whole government that would shut down, roughly about 25%. Yeah. We did a segment a moment ago. Exactly. Most of the federal government is funded into 2019. So is your advice to the president, veto this stopgap measure, stop the spending week to week, and finally fund the wall?
Well, that would be my suggestion, but I think he should have made that very, very clear to Mitch McConnell and to Paul Ryan leading into this week, because for whatever reason, they tend to think that they're on the right side of this by surrendering to the Democrats. These votes that we have, the majority in the House and Senate, are about to disappear. Mm-hmm. We'll have the Senate, but we will not have the House. And I guarantee you Nancy Pelosi will never schedule that vote on the calendar of the House. It's just not going to happen. So this was our chance, and we've blown it. And unless the president were to veto it, and you're right about the shutdown, they're going to make a lot of fears. Oh, everything's going to, Medicare checks won't go out and Social Security checks, and that's not true. The military is fully funded through all of 2019. So the big things, the things that really matter to most Americans day by day, will be funded. But I just think the president's got to look in the mirror and remind himself he ran from the time he came down that escalator on the idea we're going to secure the border.
Governor, it wasn't just McConnell that he didn't make it clear to. He just last week was talking about how he wasn't afraid of a shutdown. This is his signature issue. This is what arguably he won on. He's been talking about it, and if they don't do it now, what are they going to wait for? So I don't understand how he survives this personally for his own legacy. People are going to say, this was your key issue. This is what you promised most of all throughout the campaign trail, and they know that some Republicans are going to cave. Republicans have been caving on this issue for years. They elected this guy to do, in particular, this job. So I don't understand what happened here. Did you have any insight as to what happened between last week and this week to make him change course so heavily?
Jedediah, I wish I could tell you that I understood it and agreed with it, but I don't understand it and I don't agree with it. I feel like that the president showed such spine when it came to Brett Kavanaugh, and he gave the Republicans in the Senate the courage to stand firm. And as a result, we won. But when it comes to this, for some reason, and I don't get it, it seems like that when we really get down to the lick log, as we say down south, we always cave in and let the Democrats have what they want, and we get nothing. We get a lump of coal, and they get a whole bunch of packages under the tree, and it makes no sense to me.
A year ago, the president says, this is the last time I'm signing a bill like this, but in order to fund defense, I had to give in on some spending and take less for border security. This year, there's no excuse, but I was wondering, the Freedom Caucus got up and suddenly found their voice yesterday. Where were they the minute after that Oval Office confrontation? Where were other people rallying to his side like Lindsey Graham did during Brett Kavanaugh? The president couldn't have gotten Kavanaugh across the finish line without staunch Republican support. He didn't get into the 11th hour last night.
Well, and I will say this, I think the Freedom Caucus has been consistent on this throughout. I don't think they've ever lost their voice. But boy, last night I saw some of the speeches on the House floor, and they were very clear in reminding all Republicans, this is what we ran on. This is what we promised. And I think the key here is it was a promise. It wasn't just a suggestion that, hey, you know, if we can get around to it, if we can find a way, we might do something about the border. It was a promise. Promise kept is a good re-election. Promise not kept is a really tough thing to get reelected with.
And Governor, the big battle on Capitol Hill right there. But let's go to China, where there's another big battle playing out, one with real long-term consequences. They're cracking down on Christians again. And I wonder, you're someone who's spoken out on this. Are we facing kind of a whole new era now of religious persecution?
I don't know that it's a whole new era. It's simply the continuation of one that's been there all along. Christians have never had freedom in China. I think so many people, especially on the left, are all worried about Russia. And look, I'm not saying they're good guys, because they're not. Let's be very clear. But they don't pose near the threat to freedom, and especially to religious freedom, that China does. And I'm really happy the president has been tough with China on trade, because we need to be tough with China on human rights. Their policies of everything from religious repression to forced abortion makes them really a very dangerous nation for freedom all across the world. And they've gotten away with it. Nobody wanted to mess with them because too many people were making a lot of money off China, and we've sold our soul in order to make money off cheap things coming from China. And it's time we stand up to them and say, you know, you can't just go brutalize people because they somehow have faith in God, or because they don't believe that you ought to force people into having an abortion.
Yeah, it's just human rights have taken a backseat to trade. I think it's get the trade deal first and then focus on domestic issues. I think we've kind of backed off that of late. It's hard to know what really goes on there. Governor Huckabee, thanks so much. Have a great Christmas if I don't see you again.
Merry Christmas.
Yep. Yule logs to lick logs.
Merry Christmas to all of you.
Good evening. For a number of weeks now, House and Senate Democrats and Republicans have worked together to put together an appropriations bill to meet the needs of the American people, and now to keep government open. Somehow or other, and I don't know what the answer to the question is, the President of the United States prefers to shut government down and will resist any opportunity to keep government open. Again, we are completely ready, as we have been for a while, with bipartisan, bicameral legislation to pass the 6th appropriations bill and have a continuing resolution for the 7th bill if we cannot come to terms on that. We've offered that to the president. We've also offered him one continuing resolution with 7 bills in it. Yesterday, the United States Senate passed legislation overwhelmingly, and I'll yield to the distinguished leader in the Senate to talk about that. The President is doing everything that he can to shut the government down. Have to ask the question, why? Does he not believe in governance? Does he not care about the American people? Doesn't he know that the economy is uncertain? Hasn't he followed the stock market that he likes to brag about sometimes? There's something wrong with this picture, especially in the holiday season. And so if they make the bill bad enough, they're able to get maybe enough votes on the House side for a shameful bill that is unworthy of this House of Representatives and certainly of the American people. That I yield to the distinguished leader from the Senate, Mr.
Well, thank you, Leader Pelosi. Now, today's events have made one thing clear. President Trump is plunging the country into chaos. The stock market's down another 500 points. General Mattis is stepping down, and we know he has real disagreements with the president on Syria and on the wall. And now, President Trump is throwing a temper tantrum and creating the Trump shutdown of the government. Last night, the Senate passed by voice, unanimously, a bill proposed by Leader McConnell. All Speaker Ryan has to do is put it on the floor of the House. It'll get a majority of votes, and the president can sign it and avoid a shutdown. But unfortunately, President Trump was attacked this morning and last night by the hard right, and fearful, he backed off his commitment to sign this bill. Republican leaders told us yesterday that he was ready to sign the bipartisan bill that passed the Senate unanimously, every Democrat and every Republican, to avoid a government shutdown. The bill contained neither Democratic demands or Republican demands. It said to the American people, we have a way to keep the government open. And Leader Pelosi, Leader McConnell, and myself have done everything we can to avoid a shutdown. But President Trump wants one. He's asked for one 25 times, and he said in front of us he'd be proud to shut down the government. It is nothing to be proud of. The bottom line is simple. The Trump temper tantrum will shut down the government, but it will not get him his wall. The bill that's on the floor of the House, everyone knows will not pass the Senate. Speaker Ryan, Leader McCarthy have cynically put it on the floor of the House, knowing it can't pass the Senate. Everyone knows it can't pass the Senate. It's a cynical attempt to just hurt innocent people and do just what President Trump wants, even though they probably know it's bad for the country. So, bottom line is very simple. There's still hope. Leader Pelosi and I have put two proposals on the table. We have not taken them off. That would avoid a government shutdown and get a majority of votes in the House and Senate. Leader McConnell had put on the floor last night a proposal that would avoid shutting down the government. It is a shame that this president, who is plunging the nation into chaos, is throwing another temper tantrum and going to hurt lots of innocent people. The Trump temper tantrum may produce a government shutdown. It will not get him his wall.